One. This is Dan O'Brien from Kansas State University and David Riplinger from North Dakota State University. We'd like to talk about biofuel-related issues today, and probably the most important and timely issue of the moment would be the news that came out on December the 3rd with regard to the finalization of 45Z credits involving the biofuels industry. And it's interesting, as David and I were talking about before we came on air, and in the same day you saw one article saying with the headline of Biden administration will not finalize clean fuel tax credit guidance. And then just within minutes, another one came out that said Biden administration will finalize the 45Z credits. David, could you describe what 45Z credits are dealing with on the one hand with regard to the biofuel industry and where we stand now and where we're likely to go?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I was engaged on Tuesday on the 3rd when those stories came out back to back. And I don't know if I was surprised, but it's interesting when you have two, credible news sources giving opposite reports of what's going on. But when it comes to things like issuing final rules for regulations, that's where I can understand it. Talking about 45Z, so 45Z is a new section of the tax code created by the Inflation Reduction Act a couple years ago, and it's a clean fuel production tax credit, and it actually covers quite a few things as related to biofuels and other clean fuels. That includes, it will end up being the future of the biodiesel blenders credit, as well as being the future of on-farm financial support via the federal government tax credits. And I'll explain that a little bit more in a minute, but it's a very big deal. And of course, going back to how laws are made and how they really get legs, Congress passed the law, president signed the bill, and then you have to make these rules. And this is a really complicated, challenging thing to do. And 45Z is a very good example of that. So the IRS is the regulator, the Treasury is the regulator, but what do they know about fuels and what do they know about agricultural production? So they go and they talk to their friends at EPA and at USDA, and that helps, but it's really complicated. In this case, it's all new. So you're kind of starting from scratch. How do you develop these rules that have to be detailed enough to allow folks to operate? And do so with relatively little guidance in a way that's defensible. And we saw a little bit of a hint of how things were going to go because 40B, which is the SAF credit, they had rules come out last spring or spring of 2024 that kind of gave us a hint of what was going to happen with 45Z.
And again, and SAF stands for Sustainable Aviation Fuel. And just to add in there, the old rules are set to expire at the end of the year. So, man, the clock is ticking for these new ones.
No, that's exactly right. And it's the same thing with the biodiesel blenders credit. The window closes and the expectation was on January 1, 45Z would pick those up as well as provide this new opportunity for low carbon fuels and on-farm production. And so, the expectation, the thought was they would get these rules, that the IRS would issue these rules by the end of the year, the calendar year. That may or may not be the case right now. I think that we're so close to the end of the year and the Christmas holiday coming up that I don't expect it. But it's a very big deal. And 45Z is really an exciting, innovative policy, both working in biofuels and also being an economist, because what it does is it provides an incremental incentive for a smaller carbon footprint, and it will likely include activities that happen at the farm level. So this is pricing, right? And so this is great. So if I can provide a slightly bigger tax credit to a biorefiner for having a smaller carbon footprint, that will incentivize them possibly to do something. And then the same thing at the farm level. If a farmer already uses certain practices, they can be receive an incentive for doing that, or they can see that marginal incentive to make that change. And so it really answers a lot of these issues associated with how policies can work and getting too far involved. And here it's basically saying our goal is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. We're going to pay this much. If you guys can go do it, go do it. And there's some conditions on that. The payments to the refiner, not directly to the farmer. So the farmer and the refiner would have to find a price that works for them. There's still a negotiation there with different dynamics. And there's still homework and things that have to be done. But really, for me, when I saw both the law and then what people were saying about it afterwards, again, this is kind of like how the law gets legs, until the rules come out. It's like, okay, the law said this, so that means this could incentivize farm level practices. And then you heard that it might incentivize farm level practices. Then it's like, here we go. And even if the rule that comes out, in the next few weeks, hopefully in the next 2 weeks, but sometime soon, even if it doesn't go extremely far, they've cracked the door. We're at this point where on-farm practices that impact emissions are of importance to the federal government, and that's an absolute sea change. It's not a single crop nationwide has the same carbon footprint. No, it's your carbon footprint, Farmer Johnson.
And it sounds a little bit like the USDA's Climate Smart program, where they basically said, send us your ideas and then we'll see how to fit in with it. Now, I'm a pretty structured guy. I'd rather see something in writing, but that was a different approach to where they'd say, well, send us your best idea and gosh, maybe it'll work. So I don't want to get in the way of what you're saying there, but I guess this is consistent with I guess the title of 45Z, the rest of it, 45Z Clean Fuel Production Tax Credit. So they're looking to extend that beyond not just the agribusiness and energy sector per se, but down to the local production level.
Yeah, and it makes sense because a lot of the emissions associated with a biofuel, other, they come from that farm level production, right? So if we're talking about corn or soybeans, canola, you name it, that's a large part of the footprint. And if you want to incentivize change, you can't consider all corn to be corn or all soybeans to be soybeans. No-till corn would have a smaller carbon footprint. Soybeans grown in a alternative till system or with cover crop, it's a different number. And again, very, very exciting. And again, kind of looking at my perspective from my career, I did not see this coming anytime soon. And I was excited when the law passed. And I was excited when 40B came out, and I was excited for the expected rules for 45Z. But now we're going to have to wait a little bit.
And if I can add in also to support what you're saying, in reading some of the better informed analysis of this, there's one statement I read that caught my attention, that biofuel companies, in particular those aiming for renewable diesel and FAME or regular biodiesel, were planning not to claim the old blender's tax credit that expires the end of December, because they were planning to go to this 45Z, this new 45Z credit. And the potential downside in the short run is that there's a statement that this delay in implementation with rules coming out has led biodiesel producers in some cases cut back production, shut down plants. So here you have, I also deal with, along with your colleague Frayne, we deal with soybean markets. Well, that can't be helping the soybean market if the some of the impetus for continuing to run plants to crush from the energy side of this is hindered some way by the 45Z not being the rules not coming out and companies not being able to take advantage of it.
Yeah, no, it's not good news, and policy uncertainty is not a great thing. And I hear some people mention, well, we had pretty regular breaks in the biodiesel blenders credit over the years, and it would always come back into force and then also have a retroactive payment to fill that gap. And there was never a guarantee of that. There isn't a guarantee now. And there's also, you have new players. So if I'm a petroleum refiner and I'm not used to these types of things, or I'm just any business, I would really prefer having certainty. The having the law or the rules issued prior to, and again, even 2 weeks before, there was already these jitters in the market. They were voiced quite a bit at the beginning about a month ago, um, because people like to know, what the environment is that they're operating, and that's been lost, and things are still kind of shaky. You might get comfort because we've kind of been in this place before with biodiesel. At the same time, it's it still causes that volatility. And I'm an economist and a faculty member, and I can kind of control my world. And I say, why would you do it like this? Why would you not get your homework done and do these things? And I have to sit back and realize there's a number of dynamics. Um, there's a number of players. There's a number of things going on, and so things don't always go as I might design them as an academic, or even with an extension appointment.
Yeah, that's right. So, what specifically will 45Z do for the plants? I understand sustainable aviation fuel is part of that. Is there any more specific guidance on the relative amount of renewable diesel versus biodiesel? Does it and which plants are affected? Does it also impact the ethanol group, or can you
Yeah.
what's that policy template that we're looking at as we head off into this new thing?
Yeah. So the first thing we're looking at is we need refiners, again, being agnostic between biodiesel, renewable diesel, SAF, ethanol. They have to meet a certain minimum carbon intensity, right? So they already have to have a pretty small carbon footprint in order to get any tax credit. And then once they hit that number, they can increase it as they continue to reduce their emissions. And for most biofuels, you could get up to $1 credit per gallon if you got all the way down to zero. And if for SAF, you could get up to $1.75. So you get, your marginal change for SAF is worth more because it's new. And that would apply to the dollar could apply to any biorefinery. It's tougher to make for regular corn ethanol, unless if you have carbon capture and sequestration, you're pretty much there. But no-till and cover crops, uh, efficient use of fertilizer, low carbon fertilizer will get you there. Biodiesel and renewable diesel have smaller carbon footprints, so they're already in the money. And then SAF, depending on if it's coming from ethanol or not, becomes the question. SAF from ethanol won't make the cut if it's just a traditional plant. And so that's why there's this interest in carbon capture, Summit and the like. If you have a corn ethanol refinery on top of geology and you have this, you're gonna make it. If you're a corn ethanol refinery that has access to a pipeline and you do carbon capture, you're gonna make that initial threshold. And then it's okay, how can we do better? Are there things we can do in the plant? Can I pay a local farmer a little bit more to deliver corn or soybeans, that have a smaller carbon footprint? And it's important to know too, as I mentioned, payment is to the refiner, and there's a market between them and the farmer. So even though a refinery might get $1, does not mean that the farmer is going to get that exact amount, right? There's elasticities involved, math involved, that's going to determine exactly how that's split. And then to some extent, even more so if there's crush involved, because, in many cases, biodiesel, renewable diesel production is not done by the soybean crush facility. And so then you might have another market to have to work with. And one of the things we're really excited about is how can you get this value back to the farmer? Again, as an economist, having that incentive there, that's what makes the change, right? And so if I can have that clearly transmitted signal, farms can make that change. If the signal's kind of fuzzy and the signal's weak, you're going to see less of a response.
I've never heard anybody in discussion of this. I've heard no one talk about what I think I hear you saying, that from an individual plant level, that this would incentivize. I don't know that it'll happen, but this would incentivize local local ethanol plants, local biodiesel plants having some type of arrangement with local uh, seed stock producers. Again, corn, could be grain sorghum, could be canola, could be soybeans, to bring plant to bring those crops into their facilities with documentation that would help that facility to have to meet these new 45Z regulations and and go and go forth. So interesting how that's occurring, and it almost sounds like a branch of the NRCS or something. No,
Well,
honestly, I would think you're getting into that same mode where
mhm.
you're incentivizing industry to be involved in conservation practices at the local level. Is that where this is aiming at?
It really is, and yeah, that might not be the direct intention, right? The intention is how can we get low carbon fuels?
Sure.
And so then you need, again, the whole reason we have all these rules is like, well, how can we do this? And it actually is related heavily to NRCS because when the IRS talked to USDA and said, how could this be done? USDA said, well, we have this agency that already is built out, that has all of these rules, that has all of this staff. And in fact, for the 40B rules, we know this, it was okay, the language that you need to meet is the NRCS language, right? IRS was not going to make another 5 books to say this is how you could do these practices. They say if they're NRCS acceptable practices, you're good.
And those are well established, really.
Yep.
So that's if that doesn't bring additional change, that then it's just documentation that you. And I don't want to speak beyond what I know, but it sounds like it could be if we meet NRCS conservation practices, then then that's the documentation needed to go to an ethanol plant and say, hey, we're meeting the specs.
Yeah, and again, like so, we don't know for sure, and it's gonna evolve over time, right?
Right. Yeah, we're just in
They
the
they
front
have
end of
said,
it.
yeah, they have said that these are the rules, right? And then this is for 40B. We don't know 45Z, but they basically said, NRCS guidelines. If what they call this practice is good, we'll accept that. Um, then the question is, like, how does a farmer attest to it? And so it might just be simply that the farmer fills out a sheet electronically or otherwise that says this is no-till corn, and that's great. And then the question is, how do they come validate it? And like that's where there's additional interest. Who is the third party validator? Who does all of this work?
I think we've opened enough of a set of interesting questions in our time here. Uh, we're I would say that anybody that has an interest in these, we intend to come at them about every 2 to 3 weeks, addressing relevant issues, and certainly 45Z and its ramifications are the main issues right now. So, David, I'll let you have the last word. Anything you'd like to say to close us up?
Well, happy holidays. I hope that everybody's had a good 2024, and I know a lot of us are looking forward to 2025. And I will fully expect, I will make the prediction that we will have 45Z rules sometime no later than 2025.
Prob.
I'm going to give myself 54 weeks that we'll have rules in place.
Yep. Well, we'll have to do it by planning time if it's going to have an impact on
I
the
would hope
local
so.
level. Hey,
Yeah.
thank you, David, and for David Riplinger and also Frayne Olson, our colleague involved in these from North Dakota State, Dan O'Brien from Kansas State University. Thanks for tuning in. We'll be back in a few weeks. Thank you. Bye.